Welcome into Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Been covering the Phillies for 97.5 The Fanatic for years over on the radio, and now happy to be with you here on Locked On Phillies. Got a great show for you today. I got some odds today from our friends over at Bet Online on the MLB team's comprehensive playoff odds. Are the Phillies more likely to make it than not? I'll tell you coming up. And there's an injury now in the outfield, an opportunity for a young Phillies prospect to take the position and run with it, as somebody said today. I'll break down that situation for you. And finally, we've got the opening game of our March Madness bracket for the top 8 moments in Philadelphia Phillies history. A lot of good stuff as we ramp up towards the MLB season. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Wow, it's my first Tuesday show ever. We're going 5 days a week now, remember. So great opportunity to get out some more content for you. And some good stuff happened today. Also, a little bit of troubling news we'll get into in the second segment. But we've got some odds for you. I love the odds. I'm a huge sports gambler. If you're not, I'll basically explain what exactly this means before we dive into what the numbers actually are. So I got odds from our friends over at Bet Online on what each MLB team's chances to make the playoffs are. So we're going to go through and we're going to highlight what's broken down for the NL East. And we're also going to look at the most likely and least likely team to make the playoffs across Major League Baseball for the 2022 season. Now, I'll read to you, which is very nice that BetOnline did. They have an odds imply down at the bottom. So normally it's like plus 200 to make the playoffs, which means it's less likely that the team is going to make the playoffs, or minus 200. If it's minus money, it means the team's more likely to make the playoffs, if you're not familiar with how sports gambling works. But our friends over at BetOnline, they're amazing. They already put down that the odds imply a blank percentage chance that the team will or won't make the playoffs. So I'll read that for you in addition to breaking down those numbers. But let me give you a little tip if you're not into sports betting. If you've ever been to Las Vegas, if you've ever been to Atlantic City here in the greater Philadelphia area, or if you've even seen pictures of it, those casinos did not get that big and that good looking all on their own. There's a lot of money in this, and the books do very well. So these numbers have been well thought out. They've been run through algorithms. This is pretty accurate stuff, in my opinion, and it normally plays out more times than not to be correct. So let's take a look. Starting at the division, we're going to go through the other teams in the division real quick before we take a look at the Phillies. Just a quick run. So starting, and it's in alphabetical order, with the World Series defending champions, the Atlanta Braves. They're minus 300 to make the playoffs, a 75% chance that they're going to be in. Wow, that's not bad. 75%, I would absolutely take that chance. The only team ahead of them in the division, in the playoff race, looks like it's the New York Mets. They're also minus 300, but in the odds to not make it, it's plus 250 as opposed to the Braves plus 240, meaning the Mets have 75.6% chance, so a 0.6% better chance to make the playoffs than the Atlanta Braves. So right now it looks like the seeding in the NL East, according to our friends over at BetOnline, is Mets 1, Braves right behind them at 2. Now, the third team, as far as odds, are your Philadelphia Phillies. And there's an interesting thing about where they stack out, but they've got them finishing third. We'll dive deeper into the odds there. I'm going to keep those hidden for one more second. But let's move on to number 4. We've got the Miami Marlins, who are plus 240 to make the playoffs, meaning there's a 75% chance the team will not make the playoffs. It seems more likely than not. And that's one of the lower numbers in all of baseball. Of course, we know the Marlins have had a tough time as an organization to compete. And wow, one of the top 3, I believe, lowest in all of baseball also resides in the NL East. The Washington Nationals, if you want to take a flyer on them, they're plus 700 to make the playoffs, meaning there's a 92.3% chance that the Nationals will not make the playoffs. Clearly, they seem destined for the basement in the NL East. But let's go back to those Phillies odds because I haven't told you exactly what those are yet. The Phillies are unique in these odds. They're the only team in baseball that is plus 100, 1-1, which means if you bet $10 on them, you get $10 back if you vote that yes, they're going to make the playoffs. So that implies a 60% chance that the team will not make the playoffs. It's more likely than not that the Phillies will not end that playoff drought, according to our friends over at Bet Online. Part of that, I think, is because of the difficult division. Certainly difficult in the National League with the Dodgers, and even though the Padres will be without Fernando Tatis for a while, still a strong team out there. The West is strong. So it's interesting, but what is very, very interesting to me about these numbers, more so than anything else, even more so than Bet Online thinking it's slightly more likely that the Phillies don't make the playoffs, of all the teams that are favored to not make the playoffs. So it's more likely that they miss than make. The Phillies had the best odds to actually overcome that and make the playoffs. Meaning, of all the teams not favored to make the playoffs, the Phillies are the most likely to sneak in. They're right on that cusp. Because we're in March, let's think about it. Joe Lunardi at ESPN, he has his first four out. And you see that all the time when it comes to the tournament. Well, the Phillies would be the first team on that list for Major League Baseball if you went by the Bet Online odds right now. They would be the first team out of the playoff race based on these odds. So that means they're close. And this is without the team being really seen on the field. So a lot of new additions. I think they could easily jump past this. This is kind of encouraging to me. It would be more encouraging to see the team be favored to make the playoffs. And when you put together moves like signing Kyle Schwarber and signing Nick Castellanos, and you bring back the defending MVP, and you bring back the Cy Young runner-up in the National League in Bryce Harper and Zach Wheeler, respectively, you'd expect to be a playoff team, right? That sounds like a playoff team. Well, let's go ahead and look at another team down here, the Los Angeles Angels, who have an MVP, who had a guy who was competing for the Cy Young, and Shohei Ohtani. Well, they're plus 160 to make the playoffs. It says there's a 66.7% chance that team won't make the playoffs. They went out and got Noah Syndergaard this offseason to add to that rotation, even though he seems to be a little bit on the back end of his career. Should have a healthy Mike Trout. They should have a healthy and dominant Shohei Ohtani. And the Phillies have better odds than them. I mean, I'll absolutely take that. It looks like it's going to be an uphill battle still, according to the odds makers, which is fine. We kind of knew it was, right? I talked in our Off the Pole segment where is it realistic to think that the Phillies could compete for the NL East? Well, BetOnline says, yeah, it's realistic to think they could compete for it, but it doesn't seem like they're one of the top two candidates to win it. So, like we said in yesterday's episode, that one could really go either way. And I lean towards yes because I like to be a more optimistic person. But the odds are showing you right about where the voting came in that, yeah, you can vote yes, but it looks like it's going to be a tough slog for the Phillies to compete in the NL East and also compete for the wild card, one of those wild card spots in the National League. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the best and the worst chances to make the playoffs. I think you got a good idea of who the best is going to be. So let me just scroll down here to the L's and find them. Yeah, of course, the Dodgers. Wow, look at this. Minus 1,000 to make the playoffs. There's a 90.9% chance the team will make the playoffs. I mean, less than 10% chance that they fall short. That's just, I mean, it shows you how well-rounded this lineup is, because even some of the strong teams with incredible players have had lower odds in this because if one of those guys goes down, the whole landscape of that team changes. The Dodgers, even if they have an injury to one of their stars, they have like 5 more to take his place. They're so good. They just went ahead and signed Kevin Pillar, a great defensive outfielder, to a minor league deal, who I thought the Phillies should have given a look to. But unfortunately, he ends up in Los Angeles, not going to be here in Philadelphia. Like, they have major league players at high minor league levels. They're unbelievably stacked, and that's one of the teams the Phillies will have to compete with if they try and make a playoff push. And if they make it in, that could be one of the teams that they end up facing, being what looks to be a potential top seed in the National League. And then the lowest in all of baseball. Sorry about this, Baltimore. just our neighbors slightly down there to the south, right around where I went to college at Washington College down there in Maryland. The Baltimore Orioles are plus 1,800. They're 18-1 to make the playoffs, implying a 98% chance that the team won't make it. They've only got a 2% chance to pop in. Now, I think I saw some post from MLB, or it was one of the main baseball accounts last year that said that the Orioles had a 0% chance to make the playoffs. So, hey, Baltimore, you went up 2%. That's a good sign, right? Well, let's just be happy where we are, Phillies fans, because even though the Phillies are not favored to make the playoffs in 2022, of course, that could always change. The odds aren't written in stone. They're guessing, and that's why it's called gambling. But it's better off than the Baltimore Orioles, rather, who are down there at 98% to not make the playoffs. So there are some of the odds. You got all that. We'll talk about Bet Online in a second. I'll tell you more about their website where you can go and check out even more of those great odds. But that's what we have as far as where the Phillies stand. So if you were wondering, what do those smart odds makers out there in Vegas think about the Phillies' chances this year? It's not as good as some of you may have hoped, but it certainly shows that there's potential this year of that playoff drought ending. Now, next, we're going to jump into some potential from a young player who, with an injury to another outfielder, may see a big opportunity as we ramp up for opening day. All that in just a second. First, though, I want to tell you about, well, guess who? It's Bet Online. It's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. We're doing our March Madness bracket for the top 8 moments of Philadelphia Phillies history, which we'll get to later in this show. But Bet Online has all your odds on the real tournaments. Unfortunately, you can't gamble on this one. But from all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all of your sports betting needs and info. It just ran our first segment, gave you all that info that we ran through on the Phillies odds and the odds of the rest of the NL East. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. You can play roulette, play blackjack, all of it right there with Bet Online. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, so let me go ahead and pull up this article here from my friends over at NBC Sports Philadelphia. By the way, if you're in the Philadelphia area, if you have NBC Sports Philadelphia, you could see my smiling face coming up Thursday and Friday on TV. That's right, they put me on TV. Can you believe it? Well, I still can't, but they actually do, and you can check me out on the Mike Missinelli Show, also on 97.5 The Fanatic, over there at the radio, and we'll be on TV Thursday and Friday. Anyway, after that shameless plug, on their website, they put out an article about an injury in the outfield. So Odubel Herrera, it was reported today, is having a little bit of an issue with his right rib cage or oblique area. So right in like the side right in there, it's hurting him a little bit. And manager Joe Girardi said today that the issue would require some advanced diagnostics, and Herrera's behind schedule enough that his question, like he could come into question for being ready for opening day. The opener is only 17 days away. How great is that? Just over 2 weeks until Phillies regular season baseball. It's not great for Odubel Herrera, though, because it seems like he's going to have some trouble being ready. So what does that mean? Well, a normal manager would probably say, okay, well, it's an interesting competition. Next man up. We'll see who steps into that role and everything. Joe Girardi was a little bit more direct. So he was asked if there was an open competition for the center field job, especially now considering Odubel Herrera's injury that may keep him out on opening day. Responded simply saying, yes, it is an open competition. And then Girardi went further. He expressed a lot of confidence in one candidate. Now, who is it? Would it be, I don't know, Mickey Moniak, the guy you spent a #1 overall pick on to play this position who hasn't really panned out? Nope. Not him. Girardi said he really believed that Matt Vierling has a chance to take this and run with this. Wow, that's huge endorsement for a young player to potentially be the starting center fielder in a lineup that contains Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, Rhys Hoskins, Nick Castellanos, Gene Segura. Listen to some of those names that could also be paired with Matt Vierling in 17 days come opening day for your Philadelphia Phillies. Now, Girardi was asked about Mickey Moniak, who was drafted in 2016 in the 2016 draft, number 1 overall, like I told you. And it was not a good sign if you have stock in Mr. Moniak. Joe Girardi said he doesn't think that he's ready for the job, and it's not something they brought up. It's not a good sign for your drafting when the guy you spent a number 1 overall pick on, you have an injury in center field, and he's not even being considered anymore to fill a need at that spot. But, I mean, it kind of is what it is at this point for Mickey Moniak. It also shows you why they needed to go out and cement up that left field spot and why the Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber joint signing was so important for this outfield this year, because it sounds like Mickey Moniak just does not have a chance to find time. Now, hopefully no injuries or anything, but if something happens over the course of 162, he could see some time out there. He could get some at-bats in. Who knows what the future holds? But right now, it does not look like Mickey Moniak is part of the future plans for the 2022 season. But Matt Vierling absolutely is. And I want to tell you something really quick about Matt Vierling. You want a little in-depth on him? Well, we did a crossover with Lindsey Crosby, who is running, of course, Locked On MLB Prospects. I've told you a bunch about him. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. But I also want you to check out Locked On MLB Prospects, because like I told you, Lindsey is a prospect encyclopedia. He's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow, including Matt Vierling, who could be your opening day starter in center field for the Phillies. So you're going to want to check that out. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And we did a crossover you can find on the YouTube channel, or if you scroll back in the podcast feed, where we talked about some young stars, including Matt Vierling, and what he could bring as part of we didn't call it an outfield platoon at that point, because they had not re-signed Odubel Herrera yet. But we talked about him getting potential time at DH, sometime in the outfield somewhere. If it was at the vacant at the time left field spot, if it was at the vacant at the time center field spot. So we have that full breakdown with Lindsey if you want to learn more about Matt Vierling and really figure out what's going on there. It could also open up now, not just Matt Vierling. There's another young player that's brought up in this article from NBC Sports Philadelphia that could get a little bit of benefit from this. So Herrera's uncertain status, it could open the door for Adam Hazley to make the opening day roster. If Herrera's not ready to go, if the Phillies don't have him on the roster and somehow he ends up on the IL, then Hazley could fill in that extra spot. Hazley, who took some personal leave from the team last year, stepped away from baseball, now looks ready to come back and perform. He's another, just like Moniak, high first-round pick as an outfielder, and just has not really ever reached his potential. Now, both of those players still young. They may have a miraculous growth in skill in them. It's likely they don't, but it's a cool opportunity for Adam Hazley. I wouldn't love him to get a lot of time as a Phillies fan, but you have to feel for the kid who stepped away for personal reasons last year and now has come back and readied himself to play. He's going to get an opportunity. What he does with it is up to him. I don't have a whole lot of faith in him making waves, but the fact that he can make the roster, get some swings in at the major league level, maybe he shows us a little bit of something. And listen, they're not done. The Phillies are not done with free agency. Free agency has not closed. Just today, and I told you in the odds segment, Kevin Pillar signed a minor league deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Pillar, a very serviceable center fielder as far as defense goes, and batting ninth in this lineup, which is where Odubel is probably going to spend most of his year when he's healthy. Yeah, I'll take Pillar to do that, to play Gold Glove defense out in center. If you watch SportsCenter ever in your life, you've probably seen a Kevin Pillar diving play. I mean, there are guys still available out there, though. So the Phillies may not be done, especially since they've now cleared the luxury tax. Maybe they'll continue to spend, and they'll bring in a cheap option, a veteran option, as a kind of stopgap until Odubel Herrera is healthy. So keep an eye on that, and we'll have all your latest Phillies news right here on Locked On Phillies. But right now, it looks like the 25-year-old Matt Vierling has a golden opportunity to be the opening day starter in 2022 for the Philadelphia Phillies. Just 17 days till opening day. So we will find out sooner rather than later. Finally, I'm going to set the stage in this next segment for our March Madness first round matchup, the first one we have. I'll tell you how to find that information, where to vote. what I think is going to happen in that one, because it's a 1 versus 8 matchup, so it should be a pretty chalk one to predict. That in our final segment coming up. This episode's also brought to you by Rock Auto. So let me tell you something. We all know gas prices are going up like crazy, but you know whose prices don't go up like crazy? Rock Auto. They've had reliably low prices for years because they like to serve do-it-yourselfers like yourself. Find the best deal and help you find a much better deal than what you're getting at your local brick and mortar stores. It's amazing. They've got all the parts you need. It's not just one store with a small closet in the back that may or may not have the parts you need. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home with so much more opportunity to find the right parts for a great price. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. So why are you choosing to spend 30%, 50%, sometimes up to 100% more on the same exact parts? They're a family business. They've been serving, like I told you, do-it-yourselfers like you for over, listen to this, 20 years. That's almost as long as Matt Vierling's been alive. Their prices are reliably low, not like the gas. No, you can get these cheap. So it's awesome. I want you to go explore their easy-to-use website today to help you find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Make sure you write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you in. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That's rockauto.com. All right, so it's March Madness time. I know the actual tournament's already started, but we are now officially up and running with the top 8 moments in Philadelphia Phillies history bracket. So we have the 8 moments, just to run through them again. It's the World Series win in 1980, the World Series win in 2008, Manny Trio's triple in 1980, Roy Halladay's playoff no-hitter in 2010 against the Reds, the Matt Stairs home run against the Dodgers that we're also familiar with in 2008, Jimmy Rollins' NLCS walk-off double against the Dodgers in 2009. Man, the Dodgers must have really hated Phillies fans and that team from 2008 to like 2010. And then finally, bringing up the rear, it's the Bryce Harper walk-off grand slam. Oh, I missed one. The Shane Victorino grand slam against CC Sabathia in the NLDS in that 2008 championship run. So our first matchup, starting at the top, we have the 1 seed versus the 8 seed. And hey, 1 seeds don't lose in the NCAA tournament, but this isn't the NCAA tournament. The 8 seed's still a hell of a moment, and there's some recency bias there. We've got the World Series win in 1980 by that team, Tug McGraw throwing the final pitch. And remember, the World Series win encompasses everything within that game. So if there's a special moment, and we'll talk about that when we get into the 2008 run, if there's a special moment in that game that's kind of closely associated with that, we count it as part of that moment versus Bryce Harper's walk-off grand slam against the Chicago Cubs in 2019. Now, that's a regular season moment, the only one that made this list, but it was an incredible one. It was a great call by Tom McCarthy and John Kruk in the booth there on TV. It was a beautiful video. It's been made into commercials. It's been played on ESPN ad nauseum, and I'll never get tired of seeing it. His hair flying in the breeze with the powder blue jersey number 3 on his back, round second and third, and a dead sprint into just like a film of water thrown over him and people going crazy. It was an incredible moment. And of course, just to give equal love to the World Series, we know how important the World Series is. If you were around in 1980, I was not, but I've talked to people who were, my parents, some other people I work with at 97.5, the Fanatic, general people across Philadelphia. That was an amazing time and an amazing team too. And of course, the World Series always carries so much weight. That's our first matchup. So I want you to go to @LO_Phillies on Twitter, and you can find a tweet thread. I'm going to go ahead, and I got my phone up. I'm going to pin it right now to the top of the profile so that you can find it easily. The top is the bracket, and then the next tweet down is our first matchup between the two. We only have a couple more hours left in it from when this episode's posted. We're going to run through it quick, so make sure you jump in there and get your votes in so that we have our move on to the Final Four. We're right to the Final Four after these first matchups for this Phillies World Series. I almost said World Series. No, Great Moments brackets. We only got 2 World Series championships. Need to add to that, and they're trying to with some of the additions that they made this year. But again, Bryce Harper's walk-off grand slam, the 8 seed versus the top seed, which is winning the World Series in 1980. And I'm seeing a couple of the preliminary votes come in. That World Series victory may be on upset alert. We may have a St. Peter's type situation if you've been following the tournament. St. Peter's, a 15 seed, I believe they are, making a run to the Sweet 16. Hey, you never know. It's your votes. I can't control this one. I did put a vote in from my personal account, and I retweeted it from @ConnorThomas975 on Twitter, so you can find it there as well. But that's up to you guys. This is your choice. This is the fans bracket. So go ahead, find that Twitter account, log your vote, and we'll keep that all updated as we go through on our way to finding the top Phillies moment of all time. So that's all we've got for today. No stepping off. Normally the second episode of every week is stepping off, but with 5 days a week, tomorrow's episode will have stepping off as well as a little bit of a recap of the game that went on Tuesday. The Phillies played another spring training game. Some interesting stuff came out of that. We'll have the breakdown of everything in tomorrow's episode. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. Now I want you to make your second listen, Locked On MLB. So Paul Francis Sullivan, I tell you about him every episode. Sully, he's the best. He brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. Locked On MLB is a network full of people who are fanatical baseball fans, like me, like you. But he may be the most fanatical of all of them. He covers the entire MLB, the entire league. So it's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Go check it out for that full perspective on the entirety of Major League Baseball. It's awesome. That's a great show. I want you to make that your second listen. And what I also want you to do, if you don't mind, I really appreciate it. It helps me with the show. It helps us build this content out, get even better and better and better day in and day out. Go to the YouTube, Locked On Phillies. Subscribe, rate, leave a review. Rate and review the podcast. Get us up. I was looking at it today because someone asked what ratings we had. Only a 4.2? Come on, guys. We can do better than that. It's not bad. I appreciate it. But I'm trying to put out 5-star content for you, so I would love it if you could go and rate and review there. Give me that 5 stars, please. I'm working real hard to earn it. I promise. And if you don't think today was a 5-star show, keep coming back till I give you a 5-star show because I damn sure guarantee you I will. No, I always appreciate it. And you can follow myself at ConnorThomas975 on Twitter. Follow the show at LO_Phillies on Twitter. We'll have even more content day in and day out. Also in the works, I should say, rather, an Instagram page. So all the content you could ever need on the Philadelphia Phillies right here on Locked On Phillies. Make sure you're tuned in every day. But that's all I've got for you today. So I will speak to you tomorrow.